But in South Africa, if you want to know how the ANC really thinks, you must look at what it says to its alliance partners, one of which is COSATU, the largest union in the country, and Workers' Day, of course, is a day created by communists for communist workers. So the ANC went to COSATU to have a little chin wag together, and what they said was, well, I mean, basically what they've been saying all along, except they are saying that the workers deserve all these wonderful goodies from the state, which is why the ANC is in power, is to empower the workers.
Yes, all of that sounds like mumbo-jumbo bullshit. So you actually have to understand what's going on here, right? So the ANC actually in a tripartite alliance with COSATU and the SACP, the South African Communist Party. And on Workers' Day, Ramaphosa went to the rally at COSATU and addressed the Wakas. So this is what he said. He basically said that as a progressive government, what they are going to be doing, as long as the individuals vote for him, is the first they are going to introduce a basic income grant. That's going to come to South Africa, because COSATU, he says, wanted the government to do something about the plight of the individuals, and the 350 grant was implemented at the whims of COSATU. So he says COSATU wants there to be a permanent income grant, and that's what he's going to give them. The biggest problem is that Godongwana doesn't know how it's going to get funded yet. I mean, there have been suggestions that it would be subject to a wealth tax and possibly transactional tax and tax loopholes with corporations. Maybe that's how. The other thing that the Ramaphosa came out and promised the Wakas at COSATU's party was the NHR. He basically said, oh, don't worry, I'm still signing it. It's going to end health apartheid. And when I sign it, there'll be like rainbows and kittens and we'll have Wakanda forever. To which COSATU actually responded and said, if you don't have a pen to sign it, don't worry, we've got one. We'll give it to you. You can sign it right now. And he kind of laughed and left the stage because it's still not being signed. And for those of you who don't know why it's still not being signed, because they don't know how they're going to fund it. So we have two policies that the president says we're going to give you if you vote for us, which does show us that the pragmatic Ramaphosa appears to be becoming a populist.
Well, appears and becoming is really stretching it there. He always has been a populist. But the interesting part that people might be thinking is a basic income grant and NHI is for people who aren't workers, right? Workers can afford a medical aid or a hospital plan. They get wages. They're not going to go on a grant as such. So why is the union wanting these things for these South African people? It's very, very simple. They don't want competition. They've got a labor aristocracy in this country. The unions only control the public services these days. All the unions for the big industries have largely died away. The only ones left are the ones affiliated to the state. And if all the poor people and people who are not working get a basic income grant and the NHI and all that sort of shit, COSATU has no competition whatsoever because you're leaving people poor and destitute. They're not earning a salary. They're not going to need changes in the workplace. So COSATU can have its parasitic little influence and centers of power within the state. That is why COSATU wants the poor to have all of these wonderful things from the ANC, basically paying off the poor so that COSATU can remain in power.
That is 100% correct. And so to that degree, the actual Labour Minister, also a commie who happens to be one of the senior executives in the South African Communist Party, yes, the communist in charge of Labour, okay, he came out and basically said the hard-won Labour reforms that were done, which Labour Day celebrates, includes the creation of the CCMA, the uninsured, the Unemployed Insurance Fund, the UIF. It also includes other things such as the national minimum wage, the basic conditions of employment, the right to be overtime, the ending of exploitative practices of the individuals, occupational health and safety, basically all the labour legislation that makes it difficult for certain individuals to run businesses successfully in South Africa. And it's because of this that the DA came out on Labour Day and called it non-Labour Day, in other words, no Labour Day, because no one's actually getting employed. And they said, as a manifesto pledge, what they would do is that they would cease the national minimum wage, they would cap it, and they would allow the national minimum wage to basically be eroded by inflation over time. Now, COSATU looked at this basically had a massive meltdown. And I think that's kind of ironic, Ramon, because according to the latest statistics, the minister in government tells us that over 30,000 government employees are earning over $1 million a month in annual salary. It's a shitload of money, mate. Like, if you want to be a millionaire, go work for the government. So these guys don't typically get paid national minimum wage, but the idea that John Steenhuisen dared to say, let's get rid of national minimum wage and just get people into employment, infuriated COSATU to the point where they actually said, you know what is worse than fascists? The DA.
And whereas we're like, we are the fascists, we wish we had some of those. But all you have to know really is that the unions are not unions in the traditional sense. They are mafias. They are extractive mafias. They are in cahoots with the state. They are the engine room of policy for the most part. They are the ones that put in all the labor practices that makes it very difficult to get a job in South Africa. They are responsible for the 65% unemployment rate amongst the youth of this country and the roughly 40% unemployment rate in general. The unions plus the ANC have created a labor aristocracy of 12 million people. They've built huge moats around this labor aristocracy so no one can really join them. They have created the worst education system in the world where people have no skills. And then those people with no skills can't get employed because of the national minimum wage. It's almost like a perfect recipe to keep people poor, dumb, and destitute. And COSATU and the ANC do this for the past 30 years solely for their own material gain. And that's why COSATU wants the grift to carry on by having the ANC and the EFF go together into a national coalition.
Now, you may look at that and say, okay, so where does this leave us as a country? And why is this relevant? Labor Day is finished. Well, it's not actually as simple as you think, because the current polls are showing that according to today's statistics, the ANC is still not really at 50% for its elections, and it might still require a coalition government. COSATU, having now heard about the plight of the workers and how the DA will smash the workers' rights, have come out and said they would prefer a coalition with the EFF, not the DA, because, I quote, the DA would reverse the many progressive policies that they put in place. Now, Ramon, I'm reminded that the idea of progressive policies, this progressive policies, is actually a Liberal Democrats idea. I don't know if you know that. It actually comes from the UK. So Nick Clegg actually coined the idea of progressive policies because, you see, one of the things that was highlighted around the time where he was still relevant, that's a long time ago, is that there was this idea that you would have liberal policies versus conservative policies. And people didn't really like the idea of liberal policies, so they rebranded it. They originally tried the idea of modern policies. And then they was like, nah, that's not so good. So they renamed it progressive policies. So I have to ask you, Ramon, if I rename these modern policies and we say as modern policies, have they actually benefited the country? Your answer would be
no. The value of any policy is based on the outcome of that policy, and none of this stuff has helped the country at all. Nothing whatsoever. A worse unemployment rate today than under a government that actively hated black people. I mean, come on. I mean, that alone it discredits the entire regime of this place. But people still vote. Breeds are done is done. Who can explain it? Not me.
no. And so to end this whole entire article off, we would look at this and just remind you, ladies and gentlemen, the ANC is retarded.